Good evening to my viewing audience. Thank you for joining myself and my guest on tonight. My name is Frenchettia Payne, and I am your host of Empowering You. And Empowering You is an umbrella broadcast for my colorectal cancer 501c3, Victory and Empowerment. I encourage you to go to my website, www.victoryandempowermentinc.org. Take a look at the information that's on the website about colorectal cancer. Take a look at what Victory and Empowerment did in 2018. We are just a voice to you, our viewing audience, to encourage you to get a colonoscopy. Once you take a look at the information, you may want to make a donation. But of course, I encourage you in 2019, if you have not already done so, to have your colonoscopy. It saved my life and it could save your life as well. This coming May, I will be an 18-year colon cancer survivor. And colon cancer is the third most common cancer of African Americans. It is the second leading cause of cancer related deaths. In 2018, 140,000 individuals were diagnosed with colon cancer or colorectal cancer, and 56,000 passed. They died. And it doesn't have to be like that, because if you get your colonoscopies and your screenings on time, if you're aware of the symptoms that your bodies are giving you, you should have your screenings done. The American Cancer Society last year lowered the age for colorectal cancer screening to 45. So if you're at high risk, a family with a history of colorectal cancer, or if you're having any type of discomfort or symptoms, you need to consult with your physician and tell him and ask him or her if you could have a colonoscopy. As I mentioned, it saved my life and it can save your life as well. The American Cancer Society recommends that you as individuals and we as individuals eat lots of fruits and vegetables, decrease our weight, to exercise, stop smoking, and stop drinking. So every week I come to encourage you to get your colonoscopy, to visit my website. This is my voice to the world. I would not want anyone to go through what I went through. So again, get your colonoscopy. It saved my life and it could save your life as well. And also, before we begin the show, we always pray. So let us pray. Father, we thank you. We give you praise, honor, and glory. We thank you for your sovereignty. We thank you that you are sovereign, you're just, you're might, you're benevolent. You're so many wonderful things unto us. And because of that, God, we say thank you. We thank you for all that you have yet done. And it still does not yet appear the things you have in store for us. Looking at the situation, and in spite of the situation, we still know, God, that you are sovereign. So we bless your name on today. We thank you for this viewing. We thank you for the broadcast. We thank you for our guests. And we thank you for the young lady that's going to speak wisdom, understanding, counsel, and might to our viewing audience. So we thank you that someone will be blessed. God, we just thank you that when it's all said and done, the information that's given, that somebody would be blessed and the information could be carried on. So, God, we thank you on today. We give you praise, we give you glory, we give you honor. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen.
It's a little rainy outside, but it's still sunny on the inside. I know I'm having a little challenge today, but I am still going. I pressed my way, and God just so blessed me today to have a wonderful individual that's going to be my guest host. Kathleen, better known as Kathy, an entrepreneur, an author, a talk show host, my soror, and a great friend. She is going to be the host for the show on today, and I want to first thank her, and I want to thank our guest, Jennifer Babb. And Kathy's going to share about Jennifer. But what happened over the holiday, Kathy had a holiday cheer appreciation pop-up show, and she invited a few of us to be her guest. And so I told her, I said, this information needs to be expounded. This information needs to be heard. Individuals need to see and understand what this young lady has gone through. So without further ado, I'm going to turn Empowering You over to Kathleen Driver on today, and she's going to do her thing. God bless.
Thank you, Frenchettia. Can you tell how happy I am today? I am so happy to be in the studio. I miss it. This is truly a passion of mine. I broadcasted here for several weeks, my show was called Savvy, and the show was for entrepreneurs, authors, and people with a passion. And since I've been off the air, I realized what a passion I have for this. So I do truly thank you, Frenchettia, for having me here today. Thank you for being my guest back in December when I had the pop-up show. And what Frenchettia was referring to was I did have a holiday appreciation show for my guests that had appeared here with me at the WBGR studios on my show Savvy. And Jennifer actually is a close friend of mine. And she didn't know I was going to invite her to be on the show. But, true to all strong women, Jennifer came and she sat in the chair with me and she started telling her story. And that's the story that Frenchettia is referring to. So I want to formally thank you, Jennifer, for first of all that you do to support me as a friend. And then also for just rising to the occasion when I invited you to come and sit with me and just be interviewed, and you saw what impact it had. Yes. So formally, today on Empowering You, we are joined by Jennifer Babb, and Jennifer is a passionate advocate for the deaf community. Yes. She has a compelling and overwhelming story that she will share with us about her experience as the mother of a deaf child and now grandmother to a hearing child of deaf parents. So, if that doesn't pull you in, I don't know what will. Absolutely. So just to give a little bit of background, to reiterate, Jennifer, you are the mother of now an adult son who was born deaf.
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about Shaw and what your reaction was when you discovered that you had a non-hearing child?
Well, thank you, both of you, for inviting me.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate telling this story and bringing the deaf community into your world. I actually found out that Shaw was deaf. I would say it was an accident. Because as a young mom of a newborn and a toddler, I just thought when he didn't respond, that he was a stubborn kid. And if I said throw something in the garbage, he did. But later on, when he was a toddler, he was at my mom's house. And my brother told my mom a car backfired. And Shaw didn't move. Wow. But my brother didn't know how to tell me. So my mom told me. And I said, So I started to do tests with, pans, knocking the pans, bursting balloons. And Shaw didn't respond.
And how old was he when you
Shaw
did this?
was 2.5.
So for 2.5 years, the first 2.5 years of Shaw's life, you didn't realize that he was non-hearing?
I didn't. I just thought at times he did what I told him. But like any other person with a disability,
they adapt, right? He was adapting.
That's what he did.
Yes.
And he learned to read my lips. He knew when I was serious from my expressions and my body language. And even as a toddler and a young child, he learned to adapt.
So even with doctor's appointments and such, the doctors never even thought that he might be deaf?
No.
Really?
In fact, when I told the pediatrician, he couldn't believe it. He did all these tests. He's like, Jennifer, no, Shaw's fine. And I said, but no.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And I had to push him. And when he finally tested Shaw, then he sent me to an audiologist. But no one knew.
We have to take responsibility.
Yes.
Right.
Every element of our lives at every stage.
That is so true. 2.5. And, I think one of the things that happened when Shaw was younger, when Shaw was born, actually, they didn't test at that time. Shaw is 40 years old now. So at that time, they did not test children for deafness. They tested them for a lot of other disease, but not hearing loss or even sight.
So as a young mom, because I don't know how old you were when you discovered this, but I just can imagine, as a really young mother, then once you discovered that you had a deaf son, how did you react to that?
I was 20.
Oh, you were 20.
Yes.
So how did you react to that?
I was shocked. I was lost. There were no resources. It wasn't like I could pick up the phone and call somebody.
Or go on the internet now. I mean, now
right.
now
we didn't
can
have
go,
the
right.
internet then. So I didn't know what to do. And the doctor was lost because
First, they didn't believe it.
they didn't believe it. When he
Healthcare
was finally diagnosed, they were like, well, what do I do now? I mean, what do I do for school? How is he going to communicate? So many questions were coming, but there were no one to answer the questions.
Wow.
So I felt alone.
And you
at
weren't
20.
and you weren't in a rural area. You lived in New York at the time,
I lived in
right?
Brooklyn, New York.
So you would think that you would have all these resources at your fingertips.
Nah, didn't.
Wow.
Didn't.
Wow. So what were some of the biggest challenges then with a toddler? And then take us from, when Shaw was a toddler and you discovered that he had a disability of deafness. And then, just what you just talked about, how do I communicate with him? And then how does he communicate with others? So what were some of your biggest challenges with him as a baby, as a toddler, and then going into mainstream school? Or did he go into mainstream school?
No, he didn't. But let me go back. After I found out, the first thing I was advised to do is that he needed speech therapy. And I was like, well, if he's deaf, then he wouldn't be able to talk.
Speak, right.
Well, what I learned, because again, I had to go through an education process, is that not every deaf person is a mute.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So some deaf people have voice.
Okay.
And I'm sorry because I do sign.
No, we want you to do that. We want you because
I do sign at times.
we want our deaf viewers to be able to identify what
Yeah.
you're saying. So as much signing as you want to do, please feel free to do that. Yes.
At home, I sign and speak all the time.
Okay.
Even when Shy's not around, it's like second nature.
Nature, right.
Yeah.
Well, you're bilingual.
Yeah.
Right. You're bilingual. So going back to, trying to figure out then what to do for him as a toddler and then his education. So what were the steps? What happened? Just take us through how you, what happened during that time and how were you able to decide on the best education for him?
Remember, I was 20 years old in New York 40 years ago. And so one of the first things I was told...
Well, you just told your age. You realize that, right?
That's okay. That's okay. I am proud of my age.
Okay.
That's okay. The first thing I was told to do was that Shaw needed speech therapy.
Okay.
So I said, okay, if the doctor said so, okay, they know what they're doing. So he started speech therapy. So you can imagine being 20 years old, having a job, and having speech therapy 3 days a week.
Wow.
So we did the speech therapy, and at speech therapy, I was able to meet other moms of deaf children. And what I discovered very early on, there was a difference with how you would raise your child, your deaf child, if you were hearing or if you were deaf.
Non-hearing, right,
Yes, wow.
right.
So I saw that right off the bat, that there was a difference because deaf parents, they already know that. They've lived it.
Themselves,
So
yes.
here I am. Shai is the first person that I know to be deaf, and he's a child. How do you raise a deaf child? And there was no one to give me that roadmap. So Shah went to therapy for a couple of years, and then it was time for school. Okay, well, what do you do for school? And then, so you look at mainstream. You could put your child in a regular school, or there were schools for the deaf. And I was able to find a great school in Brooklyn, New York, St. Francis de Sales School for the Deaf. So it was run by nuns.
Okay.
So it was a Catholic school for the deaf, but it was not a private school. Because if just for your viewers to know, that every child in this country is allotted a free education. So, but for the deaf, there's no private schools. So you could only go to public schools, and you were stuck in that system.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so Shaw went to St. Francis de Sales, and then I started, because I saw the difference, I started a group hearing parents of deaf
Wow.
children because I saw that hearing parents had different
Challenges,
issues.
Yes.
We had different questions.
Right. And so how many, when you started this group, and look, as long as I've known you, I'm learning something new. Yes. So how many people did you have
There
in the
were
group?
5 parents.
Wow.
Amazing.
There were
Amazing.
5 parents in the group, and I was the mom to take the children around. So on Sunday, I took all the children, packed them up in my car, and took them to church and to the supermarket.
But at least
You
they,
know.
well, not at least, I'm not minimizing
Right.
it, but in addition to every other thing, all the other services that they were getting, they now have a group of their peers.
Yes.
To play with,
Yes.
to identify
Yes.
with. I think that's a wonderful thing that you did.
Yeah. Well, you know, you
They
do
built
what
their
you
own,
have to.
They built their own little
Community. You have
right,
to.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to.
So then, in addition to doing that, and identifying the differences between raising a deaf child as a hearing parent versus the challenges involved with a non-hearing parent and a deaf child. So then, what did you decide on in terms of? So we talked about you had to put them in public school. So what was that like? I know it was sort of a decision that was made for you by default, but what was that like for him to be in public school?
Shah started to assimilate, and he started to learn language. Okay? And then I was left out because now he was acquiring a structured languge that I didn't know.
That you didn't know. Okay.
So he would come home and do things, and I'm like, okay. Because we made up. Once I knew he was deaf, we kind of made up our own signs.
Communication, yes.
We did not go to formal training. So once he started to school and he would come home knowing things and I didn't, I decided, well, I have to keep up with him.
So how did you do that?
The school, I kind of pushed the school to start a sign language class for parents.
So I need to back up for just a second. Because all of this is new to me.
I know.
So he was in a public school, but it was for deaf children.
Yes.
Did they have their own sign language? How did they communicate?
Okay. Schools for the deaf offer different
Curriculums like it?
Yeah, and it's like some children go to schools for the deaf that are considered oral schools.
Okay.
So they push the children to use their voices. Others, it might be American Sign Language or ASL. The school that Shah went to, I didn't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
That was how the school was.
Right.
It was signed English.
Signed English.
So they sign the way we speak.
Signed English.
Signed English. So that's what Shah learned, and so that's what I learned.
So is that how you communicate today, with signed English or ASL?
I do both.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
I do both.
Okay. You're overwhelming me now at this point because
I know. I've known you so long, and we've never.
Right, and I've seen you interact with
And you
Shaw,
never
and I
talked
know
about that.
I know a few ASL signs, but I have to admit that you all could be talking about me, and I would never even know it. I don't know that much sign language, but I'm encouraged by the both of you to learn ASL, which I'll put that on my list of things to do, folks. In addition to everything else that I'm doing.
Let me say this. Even if you don't learn ASL, because ASL is truly a language, the syntax is so different from the way we speak.
Right.
So I would encourage people to just learn some words.
Right, so that you could have basic communication.
Yes.
Well, that's a good idea. I think that's good advice.
Right.
Yeah,
So is
I
it
think that's good
similar
advice.
to learning the foreign language? Like if you wanted to learn speech, French, and German.
You know,
Yes.
you ask how to go to the bathroom, where's the restaurant,
Yes.
where's
Okay.
the bus, or, like you said, certain
Right.
keywords
Like
so you can identify.
For instance, in English, we might say the bottle is on the table. In ASL, you would say table, bottle on.
Oh, okay.
So that is not easy for a hearing person
to make
kind
that
of
transition.
Yes,
I
and
gotcha.
especially if you're not doing it every day.
Every day. Right.
But it's easy to explain, though.
Right.
It's easy to explain
If
because
you-
she knows it.
Yeah.
No, the deaf person.
Oh, table, bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow, this is
Deaf people
amazing.
appreciate
I am
even
learning.
if you know a word. If you would say water,
I know. You know, they over at Gallaudet, they got rid of the president because he or she could not sign.
sign, right.
And I just
How
that
could
should've
you
been
have
part-
a...
That should have been a priority, right?
Exactly.
You're
So
president.
they boycotted everything. They
Yeah.
got it. I
Right.
was like, yes.
So, herein lies why Jennifer's story is so compelling
Absolutely.
because, we are not in that culture and, that world every day, so we don't know the particular challenges.
Absolutely.
But like you said, just hearing a snippet of her story back in December, which prompted us,
like-
to talk more to her. So, now, our audience, Jennifer, probably has an idea of, the fact that you've been an advocate now for the deaf community, and it was because of a need that
Yes.
you had. And so because you became an advocate for your son, then you naturally transition into being an advocate for the deaf community as a whole.
Yes.
So tell us why you have, aside from having a deaf son, why is that so important to you to advocate for the deaf community?
Okay, let me just go back to when my son was young, maybe 5, 6 years old. I wanted him to attend a Boys and Girls Club. And back then, we didn't have the American with Disabilities Act.
Right.
So they said, no, he's going to hurt himself. I said, he's a child.
All
Okay.
children, kids hurt themselves, right?
And, so they're like, well, we communicate with him. So they, back then, they didn't have to hire an interpreter. I said, well, I will come and sit there. Back in the day, parents used the Boys and Girls Scouts as a child
As
care.
a child
That's
care.
right.
But
That's
I
right.
had to go there and
Right.
sit
Right.
because I had to be the interpreter. And so that's how I started, because for Shah to go to this class, and just with Aaron children, I said, well, Shah's friends could come.
This group that you had created, right?
So all my little boys, my 5 little boys
They're
would
right there.
come
Wow.
and go, and that's how the advocate started, and the advocacy started, and also realizing that hearing parents, our issues and our questions, and just our view of everything with the deaf culture and the deaf world, it's so limited.
It's limited, and I think
Yes.
you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, even though there are certain challenges with having a deaf disability, but you want your child and anybody else that that's deaf to be a part of, even though they have their own culture.
Yes.
You want them to be a part of the overall culture as much as possible.
Oh, yes.
They can't just to me limit themselves to their peers.
Yes.
You want them to assimilate and be involved in everything there is to
That's
discover
true.
and to experience.
That's true.
Because I know I was amazed. I mean, because you also have, and you can talk about it if you'd like, but Shah also has deaf cousins, which are, you have a nephew that's deaf.
he has a one cousin that's deaf.
Yeah, but he's a DJ. And
but-
so
but
that,
it's
I didn't
different.
understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Shah was born deaf. My nephew was not born deaf.
Okay.
My nephew was born hearing and became deaf due to a swimming accident.
Oh,
Water
okay.
got trapped in his inner ear. So my nephew is considered hard of hearing.
Oh, he's hard
So
of hearing.
even
Okay.
within the deaf culture, there are different degrees.
So
Yes.
he can hear enough to perform his DJ services.
Well,
Right?
he could hear enough to have some speech, because remember, because he wasn't born deaf,
He remembered how to
developed speech. But then when he lost his hearing, or when his hearing was diminished, then his speech started to change.
I see.
But
I
my
see.
nephew has more speech than my son.
And is that because it's part of the whole otolaryngology makeup, the ears, the throat? Is that, no?
I think it could be, but it's with time. If, for instance, if you put cotton in your ears, you will speak different. Either you would
because you
speak
can't
louder.
hear, louder, and you can't
Yes.
hear yourself
Oh,
talking.
yeah.
So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'll tell you a story about that one, but anyway.
Yeah, but my nephew is a DJ. He says
And he's also, I think he also has taught American Sign Language, correct?
Yes.
And what better person to teach it than someone that uses it every day?
And he is big in the deaf community in terms of sharing. But he had to go back to school and learn to sign because he realized, well, he wasn't really part of the hearing world as he became a teenager. And he wasn't really part of the deaf world.
So he kind of lived a balance in between.
Yes. And his family, they didn't grow up in the deaf world. So all of a sudden, they have a 5 or a 6-year-old that's losing their hearing or that's
But deaf. I can imagine that you were there then to help them through it, because here you were with, is Shaw older than this particular nephew?
No, my nephew is older.
But older in experience, because then, by then you'd had Shaw and knew he was deaf and had started to understand what it was like to have a deaf child, so you were able to help your nephew.
Yes. And my nephew lives in this area now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he relocated from New York to this area.
And also the parent of hearing children.
Yes.
Which we'll hear about in a few minutes.
That's another challenge.
That just brings about, a unique dynamic, which we're excited to hear about. But I think, Frenchettia, if you want to take a break now, if you want to do announcements, even though you said I was the host today, it's still your show.
Yes. When we take the break, my mom's 2-minute show goes on while we're on the break.
Okay.
So we'll take a break and she'll let the commercial play. How about that?
Okay. That sounds good. That
like is great.
So when we come back, we'll hear more about Shaw as he entered into adulthood and more about this fantastic advocate for the deaf community who's joining us on Empowering You today, Jennifer Babb. And so we're going to take a quick station break, or a 2-minute station break, and we will be right back.
Greetings, this is Sharonda Carlos, Executive Administrator of Kingdom Mantles Ministries. I have the pleasure of being here with visionary and founder Pastor Sharon Burns, Apostle Cassandra Bunkley, and Executive Administrator Stephanie Browder. Why are we before you? We are excited to announce our annual conference, Restoring the Generation Connection Through Prophetic Praise. It will be held Friday, February 15th, Saturday, February 16th, and Sunday, February 17th at the awesome and wonderful Mystic Marriott in Groton, Connecticut. How can you register? I'm glad you asked. You can go to our website, www.kingmantle.com, and if you have questions, you can email us at kingdommantle@gmail.com.
Restoring the generation connection through prophetic praise. You want to be there Friday to receive a special prophetic impartation, and on Saturday to receive a revitalizing word from our speakers. And women, you have not been forgotten. God has a word specifically for you. Be sure to be there at 9 a.m. to receive your word. And then on Sunday, let's all come together to celebrate the awesomeness of God as we come together in worship on Sunday morning at 9 a.m.
You don't want to miss this. We're looking to see you there. God bless you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for rejoining Empowering You with host Frenchettia Payne. I am your guest host tonight, Kathleen Driver, and we are joined by passionate advocate for the deaf community, Jennifer Babb. We've been hearing some really, really good information and just her empowering and compelling story about what it's like to be the parent of a deaf child from way back. And, we've learned about her son Shaw from, early childhood until his education in the school system. And we're going to hear about Shaw now as an adult, but we want to, before we go into his adulthood, I believe, Frenchettia, you had a follow-up question?
Yes. Jennifer, I wanted to know, I know you said back then there wasn't a lot of awareness and resources available, but I have known, just being in communities, and I think in my community and another part, they place signs that said deaf child
Deaf
or
child area.
Right. So there are multiple signs at a distance. Has that played a positive role? Because what I saw, the person coming into the neighborhood knew, oh, there's a deaf child or person somewhere. But once I get out of here, I can speed up again. And we have, like most communities, have those speed bumps. So that has helped a little. But I know, and I've heard on the news, and I know in Washington, D.C., a child that was deaf was hit by a vehicle because they could not hear. Has the signs, and I'll just say that one change made a difference in the impact of awareness of those in the deaf community?
I don't think so,
Okay.
because people don't know. They see the sign, they read it, but it doesn't sink in as how you're supposed to react.
What you're supposed to do, like slow down, be
To the
more
sign.
vigilant, right?
Let me tell you a story, because even though I've lived my adult life with a deaf child, some things you can't anticipate, or you don't think of the ramifications. For instance, most of us have alarm systems in our home.
Yes.
It never dawned on me, if the police were sent to my house and I wasn't home and Shah was,
What would happen?
what would happen? And when I thought about it, it scared me, because I would, so I ended up calling the police department. And what I was told is that I needed to register with the fire department and the police department that a deaf person lives in this house. I said, what would that do? And they explained to me that if Shah, because then he was a teenager, if Shah is in the house and the alarm goes off,
and they burst in saying, police stop, and he doesn't hear them,
right,
then I can understand why that was a frightening thing for you.
Or if the fire, if there's a fire, they might be yelling, anyone there,
and he wouldn't respond.
He can't hear.
Right. Well, that brings up another point, about all of these young African American men that are pulled over. And, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it is what it is, driving while black.
Yeah.
So that creates a whole nother challenge for Shah, driving while black and while deaf.
Yes.
So what have you told him? What have you advised him to do? I mean, because you can't alert every police department in every county that he's a deaf driver.
I know.
So,
and Shah is very adventurous.
And so what do you do?
Like a diabetic?
No, they don't have a badge saying
They don't
that
have
I'm
a
deaf.
bracelet
No.
like a
You
medical
know,
alert. The
yeah.
medical alert, yeah.
Deafness is considered as the silent disability, because people accommodate you more if you're blind, if you're paraplegic. They would make accommodations for you. But when you see a deaf person,
You can't.
the first thing you don't know that they're
So
deaf.
that's why I think Frenchettia and I are thinking, then why shouldn't there be some type of, like, how you have diabetic medical alerts, you have, heart patient medical alerts.
Deaf people would be angry at
They
that.
would, okay. They would feel discriminated, maybe? Okay.
Yeah, they because when my son was a teenager, he had a T-shirt. He insisted I buy him this T-shirt, and it says, "I can do anything except hear."
Oh, okay.
And that's how. And also, when he was growing up, people, including my family, did not want to use the word deaf.
That's why I said it just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I was over at Jericho, and Betty Peoples at their college, she would not say she called it a hearing.
Yeah, that's why I've been
She said
saying
just the
non-hearing. So
opposite.
what's the...
No, deaf.
So just say deaf? I mean, is that the politically correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if they're different degree, they're deaf people, they're hard of hearing people. And of course, you would know the difference. The
right.
person would tell you.
Right.
But for instance, my son wears one hearing aid. My nephew wears two.
Okay.
And my nephew's hard of hearing. My son is deaf. But my son doesn't look or think of the word deafness as a bad word.
Okay.
Because he asked me when he was little, Mom, why did the talkies, that's the hearing people, why did the talkies afraid to say deaf? because I'm deaf.
And so he accepted it because that was all he knew, and
That
that
was
was
it.
his life. And
Yep.
so I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I am a cancer survivor, and there's still some people that will not say cancer,
Cancer.
the big C.
Yeah.
So there are handicaps
Yeah.
that have identities.
Mm-hmm.
There are handicaps that have, you know, you can't see the scars.
Yeah.
I have situations where
Yeah.
there's no scars, but I've been wounded, I've been
Yeah.
hurt. So I don't want to, I don't know how to say this. I understand, not have experience to where you are. They're very aggressive, the deaf. They don't want to hand out, and they're very accomplished
And independent, I would say.
and
Yeah.
independent.
And so I want to talk about Shaw in the workplace, but
Okay.
you know, as we all see, this hour is going by pretty fast. Because I don't want, you know, our viewers to think that, you know, I'm disjointed, because I do have a rhyme to my rhythm, but
Okay.
I do want to talk about what I think is important.
Okay.
Your unique family dynamic.
Okay.
So let's start with Shaw. Are y'all making eyes at each other about me?
Because you say unique, and I'm like, okay.
Well, I think it's unique,
Yeah,
and maybe,
okay.
I
I'm
mean,
just
maybe
ready
it's
to
not.
hear, 'cause I'm like, wow,
I
I'm
mean, I
learning
think
so
it's
much.
unique, but
Okay.
maybe it's not unique. So let's start with when your younger son came into the family, a hearing child,
Yes.
who now has, and I was saying non-hearing, but you said it's okay to
Deaf.
say deaf. So when your younger son joined the family, hearing, and he had a deaf older brother, how did they learn to communicate with each other?
Okay.
Because now you have a baby in the mix.
Okay, first of all, Nicholas came into the family when Shaw was 21.
Which to
Okay.
me is even more of a
I know, 'cause
dynamic,
it's
right?
older than
Right.
Yes.
So I felt that Shaw was not Nicholas's parent. So I didn't like push Nicholas on him. However, I told Shaw it was his responsibility to teach Nicholas
How to
sign.
communicate. Okay.
Okay. I signed, like I said before, I sign at home all the time. So
You
Nicholas,
sign with me sometime.
Yeah.
It's just natural. I mean, you know, but I don't, and it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
bother
do.
me. I actually like to see it, you know,
I
because
do.
I may learn something. but-
So Shaw basically, with learning to sign, Shaw started to teach Nicholas. So when Nicholas was about maybe 8, he knew some basic signs. But I felt it was important for him to go into a more structured environment because I didn't think I was the one, a good teacher, to teach him sign, because I was in a course between Sign English and ASL.
Gotcha.
And I wanted him to be more
Efficient.
and more cumulative with Shaw. So he went to Prince George's Community College. He took a class there with a friend of mine. They because I had to get special permission for him to take the class.
And so he had to be accompanied by an adult?
Yes,
Okay.
because he was under 16.
Right.
So I got permission and he was allowed to take the class. So he was the youngest child, the youngest person ever to take an ASL class at the community college.
Wow.
And so he
Trailblazers, the Babb family.
so he did that for 2 years. He took sign for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I want to fast forward
Okay.
to your granddaughter.
Okay.
So, you know, I've observed this, what I would consider to be a very unique but just incredible dynamic in the family now. So, you know, we have Jennifer, who had, you know, her deaf son 40 years ago, got the best education she could for him. He's assimilated into the adult world and, you know, full-time job in the workplace, which, you know, hopefully we'll come back to in a minute. Then God blessed your family with your granddaughter. And I
Yes.
don't want to say her name because she's little. She's a
She's
child.
7.
She's 7.
Yes.
And so now we have a granddaughter who is the daughter of two deaf parents.
Yes.
But she's a hearing child.
Yes.
And so, and I observed this, and it just totally amazed me that this little baby, her first language was sign language.
language.
And she was signing before she spoke her first word.
Yes.
I mean, this
Wow.
was just so truly amazing to me.
Yeah,
how
our
old was
hands
she?
were so
Her
little.
hands were moving
How old was she? I mean,
like one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's was her first
She
language.
was one, and she couldn't speak, because she wasn't at the age of
Right.
talking
she
yet.
could sign.
But she was
Oh.
signing, and her parents were able to communicate with her. I think much earlier, a
Wow.
back and forth communication,
Yes.
much earlier than what you see with speaking and hearing parents.
Yes.
So I said all of that based on my observation, which again is why I wanted to have you on the show, because it's just been, I mean, just so amazing to me, and and interesting, just a curiosity to me. And so, can you just tell us about, your granddaughter? And to me, it's a blessing that she was almost born a bilingual child, because
Yeah.
her first language is sign language, and now then she of course learned to speak
Yes.
English. But then with that comes, so that's the blessing and the positive. But then with that comes the challenge of being a 7-year-old with 2 deaf parents.
Yes. I asked her about 2 weeks ago. I said, how is it, having 2 deaf parents? And she said, it's okay, because that's the only thing she knows.
She knows.
And I said, but is communication clear, and, is everything wonderful? She said, sometimes I have problems explaining things to my mom. So what I do, I say it, I ask Siri.
Right, so ask Siri.
And then she could show the phone.
Then she shows the phone to
smart.
her mom.
Smart.
That's what
little
she
girl.
said to me, and I was
Wow.
like, "Whoa, I
Technology.
didn't think about
Technology,
it."
but she thought of this on her own.
Yeah,
But you
Yeah.
know, it's, I want to say it's not any different. It's similar. Many times I'll see, whether they're Hispanic or whatever, the children have come here and progressed, and the parents are in the store with them.
And the children are helping the parents.
Helping
Yes.
them.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
parents will say, we're new here, my English is not as good,
Yes.
but my daughter is going to help us.
yes,
And
Because that's what the children know.
yes.
Yep.
And it's harder, I think, to learn something new versus that's all you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's the best way that I can put it.
Yep.
yeah. And Alana,
But that's
I said her name.
You can say it. You're her grandmother. You can
I
say
said her
it.
name.
Yeah.
Well, she even now she's 7, but even when she was younger, she would tell her parents, "Stop."
Okay.
And so she realized that she didn't know all the signs, because that's one of the things. It's that when you're a certain age, like when I first learned sign, I learned sign for a 4 or 5-year-old. So my vocabulary was that of a 4
Was
or 5.
limited. Right.
So as my son grew, and especially when he went
That's
away to
another
school,
point.
his vocabulary, first of all, he learned slang, and I didn't know slang.
Yvonne.
Well, but that's with speaking too. I mean, look at how we
It's the
text.
same
It's the same
thing.
thing. I mean,
It's the same
when I
thing.
see some text slang, I'm just like, what is that?
What
It's
did
the
you
same
say?
thing.
Yeah,
Like, what
I
is
know.
that?
Yeah.
I don't even know how to respond to that. So
Yeah.
But so it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. But Alana, she realizes that her parents are deaf, and that's a
That's how it
fact of life. That's how her life is. And she would say things to them, to bring them into the hearing world, or to try to explain her point of view. And she has no problems picking up the phone and calling me, Grandma.
But what about some of the challenges in her school, though? Because I know you mentioned on my show back in December
Yes.
that, one of your challenges was that, because Alana is, and you said her name so
Yeah.
I can say it,
Yeah.
is a hearing child of 2 deaf parents. Many times when they have to go to the parent-teacher conference, you stepped in to say, her parents are going to be there as good parents should be. Please have an interpreter present. And then what happens? Because I just think that
You show up and there's no interpreter. The dad may take time off of work or left work early, whatever, and get there and there's no interpreter.
Because I was going to ask you also the same thing. Many churches, and I say sometimes the church world has a little up on the world, but then many times the world has a little up. Many churches, if they have a program,
they have an interpreter.
they have an interpreter.
Right.
Yeah.
But which is a wonderful thing. But I just think, to have a child in the school system,
And not.
and the school system knows that this child is not a special need, but it's an extra need, and they're not responding to that need.
You know, I think so far,
And it's not an everyday need.
Right.
It's just a need periodically. And then,
Right.
you know, so it's to me a conundrum, because you have parents who won't come to the parent-teacher conference.
Initially,
And then you have these parents who can't hear and they want to come, but they can't communicate with the teacher.
Yeah, I think for me now, it's like re-education of the school system, because they do have interpreters, but the school is, this might be, first of all, in Alana's school, this is the first time they've ever had a child with deaf parents.
Wow.
So
But there's a first for everything.
right. So it's like you have to go through and you have to train them. But I think what bothers me even more than that, not with no interpreters, is that with homework assignments in the second grade level, they have phonics. In the first grade, I know she had a lot of phonics. And then she would be penalized because she wouldn't know how to say the words.
Because her parents couldn't help her.
Couldn't help her. And I'm like, oh, what do I do here? Because I can't always be there.
And so what does need to happen is that, in my opinion, and I don't have a child in school, but in my opinion, just like they would have a tutor for a child that is not learning,
Accommodation.
they need to accommodate her to help her with her phonics, because
Yes.
that's the need that she
Yes.
has.
But I think it's all labeling. Because if I says Alana needs this accommodation, now they would label her and give her a 504 plan or whatever, and
always
a special need,
Right.
and
And it's not a special
need.
It's a need.
Yes.
It's just a need.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
I
really
like it
tough.
extra.
Right. And
It's
so
really tough.
what can we do to help educate these schools? I mean, what do you think, having been through this when Shaw was young, and you created the group for the moms
Yes.
of hearing mothers of deaf children. So what do you think can be done? Because you're living this. So what do
Yeah.
you think? What are your thoughts?
I think it's constantly educating people, sharing stories,
like we're doing today.
like we're doing today. And I have no problem. I volunteer at Atlanta School, so I'm constantly talking to them about the process. So in a couple of years,
It'll be fixed, but what are we? Yeah, but now
know.
But it's just like with any other crusade, right?
It's-
It's not going to be
yes.
fixed today,
Yes.
but we're crusading for the future.
it's always about the future.
This is what
Yeah.
I'm going to do, if you give me permission, and
Yes.
Kathy as well. Why can we not, if we can find someone in the school board to just view the show.
That would be
Put it
good.
on a flash drive.
Excellent.
And put it in the hands of whatever level. All we're asking you to do is to look at it and send it to the person.
Right,
Perfect.
because this need is no different than any other need.
Absolutely.
And again, I wouldn't categorize it as a special need.
It's an extra need.
It's a need. It's just something that's needed.
and I'm here speaking about my granddaughter, but I'm thinking about my nephew. My nephew has 2 children, and both
of them
the-
are hearing
children, again, deaf parents,
or
or
right.
hard
this
of hearing
county or
parents
where? Which,
in Anne Arundel County.
well, we can send it to
Right.
all the counties.
Yeah, we can send
Right.
it. Yeah, we're not
And
limited.
I'm thinking that my nephew's children go through the same thing, because when the nurse calls me, if something happens to them, and when you tell the school, okay, this is the parent's phone number, but you could only text them.
Right, because
Because
it's
they can't
not-
hear. Right.
It's not
this is
something that they do. They pick up the phone and call. So I'm the contact. So again, it's just constantly education and
It's
changing.
constant education, and as I introduced Jennifer as a passionate advocate for the deaf community, I mean, she continues to be that, not only for your son and your nephew and your granddaughter, but, just for, the deaf community in general. And so, we so thank you for your passion and your compassion and just your dedication to help. I mean,
Absolutely.
you've taken what was a challenge for you and turn it into a blessing for so many others. And so that's, I think, part of the mission why we're here, right, Reverend Payne?
Absolutely, because what you go through is not for you.
Right.
It's for someone else.
One else, that's right.
And I always believe the word today, it was so many of them during my prayer time, but it was just saying when you go through trials, it's always a blessing that comes out of it. So you working, you already blessed, your children are blessed, but for down the road, for someone else in this county, in Anne Arundel County, that's going to see this, and I promise you, I will get 5 flash drives, and I will send them to each county. Now, what comes out of it, we don't know. But I'm on a fast.
But we're doing what we feel
And I
we
have a
need
journal,
to do.
and I'm going to pray. And when we pray, things do happen. So
True.
when Kathy, I didn't even share that with you. I said that when you came on this show, I'm going to get them to put it on the flash, and we're going to, whatever connection we make in Prince George's County, we do the same process for, because I know
Anne Arundel,
principals
Charles,
and
and
I know an educator in all of these
Okay,
counties,
okay.
and that's what we want
Great,
to
wonderful.
do with this show right here. So
Wonderful.
to our viewing audience, if you have any insight, we need your help, and you can call me personally 240-723-6683. And if you know anyone in the school system, and not just here in Prince George's County, in Maryland and DMV, we can take this abroad. And it's a different passion for me. When I took care of my grandmother at a very early age, things like parking, it was hard. And then they came out the handicap. And so you had the stickers. So I would have to take her into places. Not everyone had the ramp. Now you have to have
the
a
ramp.
Right, that's right.
So there are things that are changing now, but someone has to be an advocate.
And I think it's critical what you said, Frenchettia, because we do care what school system it is or what county, but we kind of don't care because what happens is when one county implements, then the other counties will follow.
True.
So that's why
That's true.
That's why we care and why we don't care. So we just want to. When we say we don't care where it starts. We just
Exactly.
want it to get started because again, if
Finding
one
is-
county does it, then the other counties will follow suit. And then our job is done for that, and then we move on to the next thing, right?
That's true.
Whatever it is that we're called to do, that's what we're going to move
And
to.
we get the interpreters, go over to Gallaudet, get one of the professors to allow this to be a project for one of the students. To
That's a
help
good
get
Excellent.
idea. Yeah, that's a great
Excellent.
idea.
So
That's a great
when
idea.
when I saw you there, I'm like, oh, we started with everyone that was on her show, or the 3, and who's here today? So we
Because
don't
that's how God moves in divine order.
Absolutely.
So I know, Frenchettia, that it's almost time for us to wrap up. And
Yes.
before we do, I just want to formally thank you again for having me as your guest host today.
Thank you.
And again, for my viewers from my previous show, if you can't tell how happy I am, I'm really happy today to be here.
Don't you look great?
Well, thank you for saying that. And I know you have a few announcements, and
Yes.
we want to thank Jennifer for coming and sharing who she is.
Yes.
You called it when you and I were talking, and I didn't introduce her as this, but you called it a deaf ministry, which it is. I mean, we're all ministers in our own
Everything
right.
we do is a ministry.
It's a ministry. So we thank you, Jennifer, for again your passion, your compassion, and your ministry.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing and putting this word out.
Oh,
Absolutely.
We're gonna we're gonna get some ambassadors on this one. But before we go, I just wanted to make a few announcements. Excuse me. Doctors Community Hospital was on my show last week, and they talked about colorectal cancer and smoking programs that they have. And I also mentioned that I am a 18-year colon cancer survivor. So Doctors Community Hospital is the only hospital in this area that have such a program. And so they have a walk-run. It's Sunday, March the 17th, 2019 at 7:30 a.m. And this is their 3rd year, I think it is. And it's at the Schrom, CHROM, Hills Park on Hanover Parkway in Greenbelt, Maryland. It starts at 7:30, registration, warm-up Zumba at 8:45, the walk starts. They have t-shirts, adults are $15 and youth are $12. And if you have any questions or want to make contact, please call Mimi at 301-552-5178. Again, 301-552-5178. And if you forget everything, just call over to Doctors Community Hospital and ask them to direct you to the community outreach, and they will tell you or direct you to the appropriate person. And the second thing I want to announce that Prince George's County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, in association with the Prince George's County Delta Alumni Foundation, is again having their college spring tour. And this year it's a one-day tour for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders and residents of Prince George's County. And this year they will be visiting Delaware State and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. The cost is $35, and you can visit our website at www.pgcacdst.org. Again, www.pgcac.org. And if you know or have a 7th, 8th, or 9th grader, we're just exposing them to college life, $35. And we, of course, attend historically black colleges and universities. And this year it's Delaware State University and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to our guest host.
Thank you, Frenchettia. So once again, just want to say thank you all for viewing tonight. And as Frenchettia mentioned, if you can help us on this crusade to support our deaf citizens, not only in Prince George's County, but anywhere. You've heard Jennifer's story about her son, Shaw, and his challenges, and the blessing and challenges of her granddaughter, which is his daughter, being the daughter of two hearing parents in mainstream public school and not always getting, the services that are needed to support her as a student, and having supportive parents, in the school that want to participate in the school system to support their child. So as Frenchettia mentioned, we plan to send this broadcast to the various school systems in the county, to the school boards, and we welcome any opportunity for you to share information that you have with us. I mean, this is not something that we do every day, so we don't know, but we're open to information.
Yes.
But what you can do, in addition to helping us, giving us information, you can share this broadcast. I mean, it's simple. I mean, it's on Facebook Live. Share with your friends. Make it public. Make it a public post.
Yes.
So that it's easy for your friends and your Facebook network to share. And let's let this go viral. There's so much negativity. Our hearts go out. I mean, certainly go out to everyone affected by this furlough that's going on.
Yes.
And we certainly hope and pray that is over soon. So, we see, all the viral posts about that, and, those are great because we want everybody to know where to get help, with groceries and food and just whatever else is needed. There are job fairs going on. So we also want you, when you have a chance, to share this broadcast as well, because we certainly want to support our deaf community and our deaf citizens. I mean, they're just the same as we are. They just have a different way of living.
Absolutely.
So we just want to say, shout out to them. And Jennifer, take us out with thank you and good night in American Sign. Thank you.
God bless.